Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is a podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and we are just rolling our way through December. It is halfway over, and Christmas is next week. I don't quite know what to say about that except yikes, and I don't think I'm ready. At any rate, I am ready to bring you another author interview because that I can do. Christmas I might not be able to keep up with right now, but author interviews I'm trying to stay on top of. So, I enjoy it, and I like speaking to the authors, and I like bringing you new author interviews and new books to check out. As I mentioned at the end of last week's episode on Friday, I am speaking today with author Kimberley B Jones, about her young adult book, Our Friendship Matters. Leah and Sasha are 17-year-old friends who have been close to one another since elementary school. But as the summer approaches, they find their friendship tested in ways that they had never anticipated. Following graduation, Sasha's privileged life and perception of the world around her is suddenly altered when an old childhood friend persuades her to join in a campaign against an injustice when his best friend is killed by a cop. But joining the protest has unforeseen consequences for Sasha, distancing her from Leah, who becomes jealous of Sasha's new friends and finds herself on the opposing side, protesting alongside her group of new white friends. As the tension mounts between the two bitterly opposed factions, a tragedy strikes and threatens to make Sasha and Leah enemies. Can they find a way to resolve their differences, put them to one side, and learn to accept each other's viewpoints? Or is their long friendship finished for good? And that is the description of Our Friendship Matters by Kimberley B Jones. As I said, it is a young adult book, and it's the story of friendship. It's a coming of age story. It's the story of those moments in your life when things change in kind of, you have those points in your life when things change monumentally and you can go in one direction or the other. Sometimes that direction takes you away from friends that you've had for a long time. Sometimes it strengthens those friendships. And so this book examines those relationships, especially the relationship between Sasha and Leah, but also relationships between Sasha and her friend Ricardo from grade school, with whom she begins protesting. They went in different directions. Sasha went to a private high school while Ricardo went to public school, but they reconnect during this book. It's the story of the relationship Sasha has with her parents, and kind of, as Sasha is graduating and heading off to college, becoming more independent, it's that story of how do you relate to your parents when you're on the cusp of adulthood, and how do your parents relate to you at that same point? So it's really a multi-layered look at those relationships, about race relations, about what is going on in current events in our country, unfortunately, with a lot of different reactions to situations involving too often it's usually young men of color and police, and I'm not coming down one way or the other on, I'm not going to condemn all police, and there's so many different sides to that, but there are definitely some things that need to be looked at and changed. And I really appreciate that Kimberley wrote this book as a way to talk to young people about these matters and to give them some place where they can go and maybe see themselves reflected in this book, because she does examine it from a lot of different sides and viewpoints. So I very much appreciate that. Let's go ahead now and turn to the interview with Kimberley. Hi, Kimberley. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It is wonderful to have you here, and I'm excited to talk about your new young adult book, Our Friendship Matters. Before we get to the book, though, if you could share a little bit about yourself so that my listeners can get to know you a bit.
Okay, all right. I am a country girl from a small town which is called St. George, South Carolina, in between Columbia and Charleston. A lot of people are not familiar with the place because it's probably like one stoplight, maybe, perhaps. But I graduated from Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, and majored in child and family development. And afterwards, I moved to Chicago, where I met my husband and became a military spouse. And then I pursued my master's in early childhood education. And then I later became a mother of a handsome 6-year-old who just had a birthday on Friday.
Oh, fun. 6 is a fun age. Did he have a theme for his birthday?
Well, I've been doing his birthday parties for the last couple of years, so I was like, this year he's a little older. He has friends now in kindergarten, and said, okay, why not go to Chuck E. Cheese? So that's what we did.
Oh, fun. Oh, have you gotten your hearing back since then?
Oh my God, it was awesome. I couldn't even find him most of the time. Him and his friends were just all over the place.
Nice. So, as I said, the book is called Our Friendship Matters. Can you tell us a little bit about the premise of the story?
Yes. Actually, Our Friendship Matters the title actually came from the Black Lives Matter movement, but it's actually two girls struggling with the friendship, as best friends. One girl is African American, one girl is white, and they're struggling between the movement.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, they have there's layers to the story because they are best friends. They go to a fairly affluent school, but the main character Sasha has friends, or at least a friend from another school that's a public school. So she starts to learn a little bit more about what's going on in the world and realizing she's been in a bit of a bubble.
Yes.
What was your inspiration for the story?
The inspiration of our story is to actually let teenagers, children, and this can also go for adults too as well. So always have a voice and speak how you feel. One thing that I was taught is no one can change, how you feel about a situation because that's a feeling that you have inside. But what really inspired me to write this novel was when the Black Lives Matter movement came about. And then you kind of saw like a lot of different groups forming, like Black Lives Matters, All Lives Matters, White Lives Matters, so forth and so on. And then it was kind of like taking a focus off of the reality of what was happening into the African American communities. And I was thinking it must be a time that we should feel safe around cops and not scared. We should feel like, okay, cops are here, so now I feel safe. And not saying that, okay, a cop is here, should I, run or should I be scared? They're actually here to they're actually put here to help protect and serve, and then make that oath. So we should actually feel safe around them.
Right. Yeah, and there's been a lot of conversation, controversy, differing sides, and it's unfortunate that it's become so polarized, I think, and that kind of the message and the relationships have been lost in some of that polarization.
Yes, yes.
Let me jump in here so we can take our first break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll be talking more about the main character of Sasha. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. I am speaking with author Kimberley B Jones about her new upcoming young adult novel. I don't believe that I mentioned at the beginning that it is not out yet, but that you can pre-order it. So if you are interested in this, it's coming out soon. And like I said, it is available for pre-order, and we'll be talking about that a little later on in the interview. But let's go ahead and get back to the interview.
So the main character of the book is a young woman named Sasha. What about her do you think will resonate with readers of the book?
Sasha she's this cool, African American girl, whose parents work hard to provide for, her and her sister. So she's kind of privileged as well too in the book because she's shadowed, from what's going on in the world. She's not aware until she is aware. Like the kids say today, stay woke. But because she has the fancy car, the nice house, and goes to this great private school, she's unaware of what is going on in the real world. So she's also, she's actually the opposite of her best friend, Leah. And then to be honest with you, the characters Leah and Sasha is actually like Obama's daughter's name, and I didn't realize it until I had thought of the names.
I didn't think about that either.
So Sasha, she gets good grades. She's in every club of the school and she plays sports. But because she's doing all these good things, and she goes to a private school, with both white and African American kids, and so they're kind of shadowed. They don't know what's going on, around them in the world. So they don't think about those things because everything is already handed to them. So that's basically Sasha.
Right, and it's interesting to see as Sasha learns a bit more of the world around her and what's going on. She begins to struggle a little bit with her relationship with Leah because of just their different worldviews, I think.
Yes, because Leah, she's supposed to be like, the rich, little snotty girl or whatever, but, Sasha doesn't care because, that's her best friend. So she's going to always have her back no matter what, but as the book goes on, they start struggling with the views of the world because Sasha is unaware of what is happening to her race. And on the other hand, Leah, she doesn't kind of understand because it's not happening to her.
Right. So you definitely get that different viewpoint and kind of, at what age do you learn empathy and those sorts of things? Speaking of age, what ages do you think respond best to this story?
I think from 14 up to, it's a young adult book, so I would say between 14 and 19.
Okay. And what do you hope those readers might take away from the book?
In this book, you have to kind of put your feet in both of the girls' shoes. For Sasha, you have to see how does she feel because something volatile is happening to her race. And also for Leah as well, too, how does she feel because her race is being targeted as being privileged in many ways, and her best friend is fighting for a much-needed cause. How does that make her feel? She kind of feels left out. She kind of feel like, oh, my best friend doesn't care about me anymore because she's fighting, for a cause. What about me? Don't just forget about me, And Sasha and Leah's kind of, she's protective of Sasha, so she gets kind of jealous because she kind of feels like she's left out.
Right, and you get the idea that she feels a little bit almost personally attacked because of the protesting that Sasha starts doing and, the things that she gets involved with. Leah feels a little bit like as a white person she is, being not physically attacked or anything, but I think she definitely feels jealous and left out.
Yes.
Yeah, so did you do any kind of research for the book?
Yes, I did. I had to. And I also saw, I did research on how many African American young adults are killed amongst cops throughout the year, and the numbers are really high. I also had watched a documentary of how so many young adults was protesting to make a change for their communities and how they were going back and forth, to jail because they was fighting for a cause. Some quit school to protest. But at the end of the day, they just wanted their voice to be heard. And like I tell anybody, it's like a science project. You form the question, how can we make a change with the police brutality amongst so many African Americans? Then you do the research. Okay, it's been happening in so many states, Florida, Missouri, Texas, and so many other states. Now that we have, the question and did the research, how can we make a change? And that's how Our Friendship Matters was written. Children are, we when we were kids, our parents taught us that we are the future, and that is the truth. Children are the future, and if we keep educating and showing them, then, constantly the world is becoming more diverse. We can constantly keep changing things and changing things, so, we can put a stop to some things.
Mm-hmm. And as the mother of a young African American boy yourself, is that kind of what you try to instill in him when you talk about these subjects? Obviously, at a child appropriate level.
Mhm. And yes, and also I do have with my children's books, I kind of read him and educate him, some, and I try to put the positive, in the negative that's happening, so he'll understand. And as going back to, with Sasha, she hasn't, been educated, because like I said, she feels somewhat privileged too because of her surroundings, her school, her parents, being doctor and a lawyer and things like that. So they don't feel the need to have to talk to her. They try to feel, let's just forget about that. We give you a good education, we give you money, so you don't need to worry about things like that.
Right, and their relationship kind of changes throughout the book as well as they struggle to come to terms with, both of their differing perspectives. Are there autobiographical elements in the story or the characters?
Yes, it is. And actually, there are some true events in here, and especially some things that happened to me. And it's inside the book. It's inside the book. As the readers read, they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And some of it may happen to them too as well. But yes, there are a few in there.
Okay. And on your website, it says coming soon. Do you have a date for when this will be published?
Yes, the pre-order is going to hit February 2020, and because of it was January because of the holidays, we kind of push it back. So we push it out to pre-order will start February 2020.
Wonderful. That's so exciting. You mentioned that you also write children's books. What prompted you to then start writing young adult as well?
I always wanted to write young adult books, but children's books was on my mind first. But the need for the need for children's books is very high, and it's the young adult books is what I really wanted to do. I actually was in high school, and me and one of my friends, we used to write books, just write little things, little quotes and things and paragraph stuff. And we actually wrote a book, but I couldn't tell you where that book is or whatever. But I always wanted to write a young adult book, and now that I'm writing novels, it's kind of hard. I'm not going to go up. It's kind of hard going back to my children's books because it's a long progress. When you're with a publishing company, it's a lot of long progress with the editing and things like that as well. But I did not forget about my children's books. I still have them, and they're still there on Amazon.
And are there any of those books that you would like to highlight today?
Well, we can talk about my book. It's actually a Christmas book, and it's called Holiday Freedom, which is
perfect.
It's available. Yep, it's available on Amazon, and it's also a teaching book to children about how things were back then with African Americans when they were actually on plantations. Christmas holidays was the only time that they had freedom. If they had that choice. That's the only time they can go visit, their cousins or, to be honest with you, some wives had husbands on different plantations. So that's when they had a chance to, go and have fun, and they had freedom during the holidays.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's something that's definitely a part of that history. But I love that you put it into a children's book to make it, more understandable and more approachable, and to understand that part of history and culture. So that's really cool.
Time for our second break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll be talking about what Kimberly is working on now. And of course, I will ask her nosy questions about what she's reading and what her son is reading and all of those things that I just love to know. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. I'm speaking today with author Kimberley B Jones about her new young adult book. It is called Our Friendship Matters. Let's go ahead and get back to that interview.
And so are you working on a new book now, or are you still kind of focusing on the current one?
I am actually marketing the current one, Our Friendship Matters. And I do have to go back. We are like in the art stages and, changing things around, getting reviews and things like that. But now I'm actually working on a small piece with my publishing company, Box Starter, a romance piece. And I'm actually just finished up a novel. It's called Miseducation. It's a new adult, and it kind of gears towards, women rights and things like that. But now I am actually working on a young adult suspense book.
Fun. You are definitely busy. You mentioned that you wrote stories with your friend in high school. So is it something that you've always wanted to do? Did you always want to write and be published?
Yes, it's always something I wanted to do since I was in high school. And I actually wrote a book when I was in college, too, because I had a children's literature course. So when I created this book, it was kind of similar to my children's book, but I couldn't tell you where that book is today. If I can go back and get it, I would, but I couldn't tell you where that book is today.
Don't you hate that? So do you, out of your own journey towards becoming a published author, do you have advice for aspiring authors?
Yes, and I know it kind of can get frustrating sometimes, but all I can tell you is to keep writing, keep going. Don't give up, because there's always going to be somebody who's going to believe in your story. So keep going, keep writing, never give up, because I know those days will come. You're like, oh, maybe I should stop writing. Or maybe you might just get like a negative review and things, but don't worry about the review, because reviews are there to help you. So just keep writing and keep going and never give up.
Thank you. That's very, very nice and wonderfully positive. When you take time to read for yourself, do you have favorite authors or genres?
Yes, I do. I do love the late Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou. And one author that really inspires me is Rita Wilkes Garcia. I love her books. I actually have all her books, especially the one that's coming out now is already on pre-order. I love Rita Wilkes Garcia. And it's much more. I just love to read. I love to read because a lot of books, as we read them, a lot of books do educate us and say, oh, no, yes, they're right. And, people can voice their opinions inside their books. So I do love a lot of books, but those are the main three, authors that really inspired me. And my genres is always young adults. I love young adult books.
Mm-hmm. And do you what kind of books is your son into right now? What do you read with him?
Oh, right now, to be honest with you, he loves dinosaurs. So he sees any type of dinosaur book he has to have. He's like a science guy. So he likes sharks. He likes to hear about stars, the sun. He likes, dinosaurs, fossils, and things like that. And actually, since he's in kindergarten, so now I try not to read to him. So I get the level 1 reading book. So I try to get him to read to me at nighttime now.
Wonderful. Does he enjoy that?
Yes, he does. He loves to read. And if I try to skip a night without reading, he'll call me to his room to make sure I read to him.
I love that. Good job, little guy. I know that you have a website, so can you tell people where they can find your website and if you're on any types of social media?
Yes, my website is www.kimberleybjones.com. And to spell my name is not spelled the regular Kimberly. It's www.kimberleybjones.com. And right now, if you go to that website and subscribe, you will get a free art when the book comes out. And as well, you can find me on Twitter at Kimberley B Jones, Instagram, author Kimberly Jones, and Facebook is at author Kimberly B Jones.
All right. Thank you so much. Is there anything that we haven't talked about in our time together that you really wanted to highlight or mention about writing or your newest book? Anything that we haven't touched on?
No, we touched on everything. Just look for my new books coming out. If you subscribe to my website, you will be updated on everything. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to me about the book. It is available for pre-order, as you said, starting in February of next year, which is exciting. And I hope that lots of people will go and check that out.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you again to Kimberly for taking the time to come and speak with me about our friendship matters. I really appreciated that. I appreciate you as always, and as part of that appreciation, I do like to offer some giveaways at times. I have advanced reader copies of our Friendship Matters. You can't get it yet. You can pre-order it, but you cannot get it yet, so I can help you out if you would like to read it. So go ahead and go to our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, GSMC Book Review, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and comment on this episode. It is episode 203, interview with Kimberley B Jones. Tell me about your high school bestie. I mean, you could just leave his or her name in the comments and tell me about your high school bestie. I had a couple. Renee and Willa and Kayleen were my 3 high school besties, and they got me through some good stuff, some hard stuff. They got me through it. So like I said, you will be entered to win a copy of our Friendship Matters, an ARC, an advanced reader copy, if you just go to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram and comment on this post with the name of your high school BFF. Thank you again for joining me. If you are a fan of this podcast, and I hope you are because you've listened to this whole episode with me, and maybe you've listened to others, but maybe you're new, maybe not, I don't know. Either way, if you could, when you're going to social media to comment on this post, you could follow us on social media. You could like our posts, retweet them, share them, do all of those wonderful things that really help us out. And you know what really helps us out? Reviews. If you could subscribe to this podcast as well as review it, Christmas would come early, and I would say thank you so very much. Wow, I don't know what the inflection in my voice was right there. But yeah, please subscribe and do all those wonderful things that help us out. In the meantime, thank you again to Kimberly. Thank you as always to you. I hope you have a wonderful week. So you're having a wonderful week so far, and the rest of the week goes well. I hope part of that week involves lots of time to get lost in a good book. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.